morning.
Awesome.
I'm going to call you Adam because that's who you are.
That sounds good. I like Adam. That's good. Nice Hebrew
Good.
pronunciation to remind me that I am dirt.
Well, did you read what the Pope said at I think it was the Holocaust Memorial, that beautiful prayer that he prayed, which was about creation and Adam and humanity, and how could we have fallen so far from the goodness of God's creation. And oh my gosh, it was so powerful, but I didn't know like where the prayer came from, if it was some liturgy somewhere at the museum, or I don't know. But you didn't see that, did you?
No, I did not see that. But that is really fascinating because it's one of the big controversies, I think, in mimetic theory at the moment.
Oh, about the goodness of creation?
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, and about, like, if creation is good, then how did it go wrong so quickly? And in Girardian studies, there's this controversy over whether it ever was right to begin with.
Exactly right. And that is why I loved this prayer, because it raised the question and didn't answer it.
Oh, really?
It said, how could something made good have gone so bad? And it couldn't have been something intrinsic to us. Of course, I'm not using the same language that the prayer used, but the point was, it wasn't something in us that you made, so what the heck was it? Yeah. Please forgive us.
Wow.
Please forgive us in your infinite mercy. Forgive how far we have fallen from the goodness that you created. That's why when you said about the dirt thing, I was like, yeah, that's that prayer. We've messed up big time. We don't know exactly why, but we're already forgiven.
Well, that's one of the reasons that I embrace my name, is because the dirt is good. God created the earth and the dirt and called it good, and so I embrace the goodness that is dirt. I love it. Well, I'm going to have to check out that prayer from Francis and see what that's about, because that sounds really fascinating and is an important conversation, at least in where Girardian studies is going with hominization. So we had that great conversation with Andrew McKenna about Cesario Bandera's book, A Refuge of Lies, a couple weeks ago. That was fascinating. So that's good stuff.
Well, that prayer might be a good thing to blog about, to continue that discussion, because it's the kind of thing where, we're not going to find the answer, but we're just going to keep raising questions about it,
Right. Yeah.
And I thought of that video we did with Andrew too, and with Cesario's book, because it's all of a piece. It's that same question about the nature of humanity, and are we formed in goodness, for goodness, or what? Yeah.
Well, it's what I love about the Genesis 1 story, is that it tells a truth that you can live into, the goodness, the non-violence of God, who creates through love and not through violence, like the mythical stories that were happening around the 5th century, ancient Babylon. It seems like that creation story, is a critique of those violent creation stories where God just says the word and there it is. It's incredible. It's much more boring than those violent mythical stories, but it tells an important truth of the nonviolence of God, I think, which is an important truth to tell. And you can live into that story, or you can live into the other mythical stories of that the world is based on violence. So that's kind of the choice that I think that the authors of Genesis 1 were giving us. And man, what a dramatic, to see the inbreaking of the non-violence of God from the beginning in creation is such a powerful way to tell the story, I think.
Right. And that's, lots of ideas are popping in my head while you're talking, because I should probably write something now after the Faith Forward conference in response to it. And one of the things that everybody seemed to be thinking and aware of is that we need to begin to figure out how to teach the nonviolence of God to our children, and how do we reimagine Christian formation for children and youth in light of this new inbreaking of the Spirit, as you're saying, this new. It's new, it's old, it's just that it takes us a long time to understand what God is trying to get through to us. We're maybe sometimes made of stone up here because it's so hard to penetrate.
Yes.
But
stiff-necked. We're a stiff-necked people. Yeah. Yeah.
But anyway, that spirit of nonviolence is really moving in the world today, and the question is, how do we live into that spirit, and with our youth and our children, and how do we teach that, and in fact, Adam, I wanted to ask you, my little 6-minute and 40-second talk that I gave, I've got the slides and I've got the talk, and I was wondering if we could figure out a way to record my voice with the slides, and then that could be a post. That could be my, follow-up for the conference, and then talk about how that spirit was there at the conference.
Yes, we can definitely do that. And along with that post, I think we should also have the text in there too. But yes, we should record your voice and have it, the images go through as you're talking. I think that's a great idea. Let's do that.
Yeah. And I don't know how many of the talks they recorded and are going to be linking to from the conference, but there were some great conversations. I mean, the one that Mark Iaconelli and Bishop DeRocher did on ritual was priceless, and I went to their talk back, and they were fabulous. But it was just a great conversation about the role of ritual in our lives, and a lot of churches, Protestant churches, really are non-liturgical or non-ritually. I don't know what the right word is. I'm raised Catholic, so I'm still a sojourner in the world of the Protestants, but this idea, both Mark and Bishop Paul were saying, if your church doesn't have ritual as part of your regular meeting, you should think about it. You should really consider incorporating rituals that, and so someone asked, what's the best one to start with? What ritual should I start with? And they both said, find something that expresses what's important to your congregation. In other words, let the ritual emerge from your congregation's experience. And ritualize something around it, whether it's, lighting a candle or, offering something from the congregation, whatever. It was almost like it doesn't really matter what the form of the ritual is, as long as its meaning is present for the congregation. Yeah. And they talked a lot about the action of the ritual and the word, meaning the action and the word have to be connected. Otherwise, the ritual gets emptied of its content. So it was just, I mean, I just surely hope that that one is posted, because it just works with mimetic theory as well, of the way humans are formed through our bodies. We're embodied beings. Um, you would have loved that one, Adam. You would have loved it.
I do. I love that because, as you were hinting at, a lot of Protestants reject ritual because it seems empty or dead. It lacks meaning and significance, and it's really a tragedy to Protestantism because ritual, in the Christian sense, is all about, and here we get mimetic theory, it's all about mediating God's presence through the material world. So here we get back to creation, right? Like, creation is not bad, it's fundamentally good, so good that God enters and mediates God's self to us through the material world. And you certainly see this in the incarnation. And it's also goes back to sacraments. So the sacraments are all about mediating God's presence through rituals like the Eucharist. Through the goodness of bread and wine, the material world, God comes through us. And ultimately, I think rituals are leading us to live a life of sacramentality, of sacrament, of mediating God's mediation through humans to one another, living a life of love, compassion, forgiveness, to live sacramentally. I think that's what ritual is getting us to try to do. And Protestants, by rejecting ritual, are rejecting one of the core spiritual practice and one of the biggest important things that Christianity has to offer the world.
Yeah, well, one of the things they both Mark and Bishop Paul pointed out was that, because someone asked, rituals can be so boring. And I leave not having had any kind of emotional connection to it. And they both said, rituals is always about you having an emotional experience. Rituals have an impact on you simply by participating in them. Something is done to you for you in the ritual as well. So there was this paradoxical sense that, yes, we have to understand what we're doing, but on the other hand, we just also have to give ourselves over to it and just let God do God's thing for us. It's not up to us.
One of the things that reminds me of is James Allison in Jesus the Forgiving Victim says that we are formed through habits. And we often think of habit as being a negative thing, a boring thing. But here, when you bring habit and ritual together, even a ritual that might seem empty, that you are going to it every Sunday or whatever it is, that you are going to it and being in community and saying that being in this community is so important that I'm going to do it habitually is, I think, part of the commitment of being a Christian. Like, you're not always going to find fulfillment in this world, but you are going to, even through the boring stuff, you are going to be committed to this way of life in this community. And I think that habit is so important to develop.
Well, and especially in stuff, Adam, because as you point out, the pagan mythologies are very exciting.
Yeah.
And the point of them is to whip you up into a frenzy so that you'll merge with a crowd and participate in a cathartic sacrificial event. And James Allison also points out that the whole purpose of the Christian liturgy is to teach us how to calm down, how to be part of a community in an unexcited way, in the negative sense, in a non-rabid, mobby kind of way, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, in a way that reflects what we're trying to do, both at Raven and at Teaching Nonviolent Atonement, to show that God is a God of love, compassion, and forgiveness. And this is what's so important about ritual, is that Christian ritual can be hijacked, I guess, into something that looks much more violent than what Jesus wanted to offer through the sacrament of the Lord's Supper, through the Eucharist. I mean, we see that ritual gets hijacked and is part of the big dominant theme in Christian theology of penal substitutionary atonement, which is a whole nother big topic to discuss.
My God, Keith and I watched this movie Joy Noel last night about that truce that happened during World War I in the trenches between Scottish forces, Germans, and French forces. And there was this chilling scene in which I think he was a bishop or I don't know what, some, a higher up in the church from Scotland. Was it Scotland? Oh boy, I can't remember exactly. But anyway, he rejects the whole premise of this truce and says he talks to one of the priests that was there and says you were fraternizing with the enemy and you were leading people astray, and this is not what God wants. And then he conducts this service for the new recruits coming in because these other people have been tainted by friendship with the enemy and they won't kill each other anymore. So he's over at the altar consecrating the bread and the wine and says, go kill those Germans, every last one of them, so we won't have to do it again. This is what God wants you to do. And he quotes, you know what verse he uses? I have come to bring not peace but a sword. Just says that one verse and says, the sword is in your hand, go kill those Germans.
Yikes.
Talk about hijacking something.
Yeah. It kind of leaves me speechless. I just want to make one last point, and then maybe we're at the end. We're running on 18 minutes in this conversation, but I just want to make one last point. I just finished reading Tony Bartlett's book, Virtually Christian Again, and Tony makes the point that when Jesus says, love your enemies, he is critiquing the whole violent tradition within his own tradition and within every tradition that says that God is violent. So here you've got these two verses that are being used to have these radically different theologies, I guess. Love your enemies. I didn't come to bring peace but the sword. Just very, how do you interpret those different passages is just hugely important for Christian theology and anthropology.
Absolutely. And this question, this battle of interpretation, that goes on. It's like, I have the correct interpretive key. No, I have the correct interpretive key. And heck, what are we doing? We're saying, no, we have the correct interpretive key. And sometimes I despair of ever solving any kind of question that way about, what does God want from us? And, coming back to the Pope and reconciling with the Eastern Orthodox Church, and he kissed the hand or the ring of the patriarch of the Eastern Orthodox Church. And it's like, trying to heal that rift. It's a rift of what? It's just a rift of doctrine or interpretation, whatever you want to say. I don't want to end the conversation on a note of despair and futility, but sometimes I'm like, holy nah, how are we can't even reconcile among Christians. How are we going to reconcile among people with completely different starting points?
This leads me one final thought. I've got an article that I'm going to post, I think today, on a book review by Matthew Vine's book, God and the Gay Christian. And what Matthew Vines does in that book is provide all of the arguments that you've probably heard about why we should be supportive of same-sex marriage and unions. And it's all of these scholarly arguments that are put in a way that's easily understandable, and he writes with a great writing style. But I think my main point is that you're not going to convince people with arguments, with scholarly arguments. What Matthew does show in his book is how he and his dad and others live through the tension of being in relationship with somebody that you disagree with and also love them, and how you can come out the other end closer and showing the love of God to one another. So I think that is the answer. Like, you're not going to solve any of these problems through arguments. You're going to solve it through commitment, habit of love towards one another, even towards your enemies, as Jesus taught us to love our enemies.
Amen, Adam.
All right. Well, that was a fun conversation, and I look forward to the next one. Before we go, what are you think? You've got your Faith Forward post that you're thinking about posting sometime this week. Any other thoughts?
Well, I'm getting ready for these theater talkbacks.
Okay.
We have next weekend. I'm doing the one on wit, and then, or this coming weekend, and then the following weekend is the Looking Glass play in the Garden about Charles and Emma Darwin.
Yeah.
With Anthony coming in this afternoon, because we're going to work on a pre-show and post-show discussion on that. So that's where my brain is. So that's what I thought, if I could do the Faith Forward post this week and maybe write something else about wit. I don't know.
Yeah, that sounds good. Excellent. Yeah. Cool. Well, tell Andrew hello for me and give him a hug for me when you see him.
I will, Dom.
All right, my friend. I will talk with you soon.
Great.